Good morning and welcome to this episode. There, I'm getting the words out. This episode of the Vision Alignment Show, where we all understand how important it is to know that we have blindness in our lives. We all have blindness in our lives, but also we have this innate ability to understand our core beliefs and our core values need to be aligned with our vision. There is where it all begins. So as we continue to go through this process, we continue to get more comfortable with it. So I'm getting more comfortable with it. Hopefully you are as well. And somebody that's always been comfortable with it from my perspective is our friend, Mr. Dave Caperton. Hey, Dave!
Joe! That's what I want to be called. Friend of the show.
A friend of the show. Well, that's so awesome. So, Dave, tell me, what we're going to talk about today.
Well,
what do you think?
We discussed, we had a little conversation beforehand. It was kind of interesting because you said, we're talking an awful lot about diversity and how do we connect with people who are not like ourselves, and how do we bring value? So, with that in mind, I would start with, first of all, the simple prayer that I always make before I go on any platform to speak to any group. And somebody asked me one time, they said, do you pray before you go on? I said, yeah, always do. And they said, well, what do you pray? For your success, for your program. And I said, no, it's real simple. Get me out of the way. Because that's the truth. Yeah. That is the obstacle that keeps us from connecting to others, from understanding others, from building and creating, I think, value for a diverse, as we talk about diversity, how do we connect with people who are not like ourselves? Yeah. Well, first of all, I got to get myself out of the way. So let's talk about that.
If you want to hear more, stay right there. Dave, that is awesome. I'm so glad to hear you say that and getting yourself out of the way. Before we go into this, I want to make sure that everyone on the call knows, we call this a call, right? On the call knows that we are wanting you to share this video out with as many people as you can think of, because when you share this video out, you make this community larger. And making the community larger is one of the things that we want to do. We want to make sure that everybody gets to experience what it is that Dave and I are going to talk about. So that's one thing. Also, put in your timeline, if you would, please, a picture of you winking. And when you wink, I want you to think, this guy, meaning me, knows what makes him unique, and it's not his eye. What makes me unique is my positive personality and how I'm able to share my story with other people in order to have a lasting impact on their lives. So that's what makes me unique. what makes you unique? So think about that when you're taking that picture. And then, as always, if you want, please put in a hashtag live if you're listening live. If you're listening on replay, put in a hashtag replay. That's important. So I see there are people on, so please put in a hashtag live and where you're coming in from. And then what else? Oh, go to brianwagner.live and check me out. So there you go. To stay connected. Now, Dave, tell us.
Yes. I was listening. That's every word you said.
Did you really? Well, I hope you noticed I got a new haircut today.
I thought Brian's looking quite natty today. Quite natty.
Natty?
Natty.
Is that short for nasty?
No. Yeah. Quite dash, let's say. Yeah.
I see. You're going with a British theme here.
Yeah, that's shorthand for highfalutin.
Well, highfalutin, that's me.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah, right.
You extended on your teacup, right?
Well, let's answer the question for everyone on the call here. Again, I call this a call. I don't know if that's right or not. The live stream show.
The experience. The live stream experience that we're all sharing.
Yes. I have to stop calling it a call. And I'll start calling it.
It's a show, baby. You got
a show. It's the Vision Alignment Show. Right on.
Anybody can have a call. You got a show.
La-di-da. Well, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how we can encourage and lead other people that are different from us.
Yeah, and I think this is, we know that we're in a time period that is more divided than we've seen probably in your lifetime anyway. And we're thinking we're a lot more aware of identity lines than I think we have been in quite a while. They've always been there, but I think right now with everything that's happened, including the pressure of the pandemic, we're separated, and then we see what's happened in Minnesota, with George Floyd, and now this latest thing that there's a lot of thought about who we are, what groups we're part of, and we're focused an awful lot on the divisions. And so it's tricky, I think, for any of us to try to think, how do we bridge some divides? How do we connect with people who are not like ourselves? They didn't grow up the same way we did. Because, my message is actually a pretty simple one. Joy not only has value for your personal balance, but it's also an intentional and repeatable process that you can actually create it. And it's really should be part of your success strategy. So I want to raise it to a mission level goal. And so with that in mind, well, there's a pretty broad market out there that I believe could benefit from those reminders and those steps and processes to make it. I had the opportunity to speak for, it was a financial organization, for their national conference for their professional women. Now, this was, to me, I have to admit, I felt like I was a strange choice. Really?
One of these things is not like the other one.
Yeah. Haven't they heard enough from people like me?
Uh-huh.
And so it was in Washington, D.C., right? And I walk in the room, and there were some powerful folks in the room. One was the former Senator Olympia Snow.
Yeah.
And she's in the room. She's going to be in my audience. And I could see when they're introducing me, I'm thinking, I don't know that, yeah, I'm going to be able to connect with them until I find a way to overcome what I know is in everybody's mind, And so I said, well, when I first got up, I thanked them for a nice introduction and all, and to be invited. And I said, I know that all of you were thinking for our national conference, why don't we have some old white guy come in and mansplain joy to us, right? In that moment of shared humor, I was able to disarm that and take that thought out of their heads, and they laughed, and that was, I could tell from the volume of laughter, yeah, they were thinking that, right? But what that did was that opened things up, and all of a sudden, when I did share what I thought were good ideas that could benefit anybody, regardless of your background or the whatever groups that you identify, your identity was part of. It made that possible for me to be heard instead of the difference between us. So, last time we were together, we were talking about humor, and April was Humor Month. Humor served me really well in that regard, because in that moment, I was able to say, okay, I recognize what you're thinking, and I'm willing to poke some fun at this irony that I'm sure many of you are aware of. And if I don't address it, it's going to be an obstacle between us, right? So humor, sometimes when we aim it inward, is a great way to open things up and to connect with people who are very different from ourselves. But we have to aim it inward, right?
Yeah.
So when I was telling you in the introduction, my prayer is to get me out of the way. One of the ways I can get me out of the way is to, in that case, it was, let me tell you what I think you're thinking about me, so that we can move me out of the way and get to the ideas that I think in sharing with you, you might find some value in. Not because it's me, but because the ideas have value, right? Because the experience, shared laughter, has some value, right? But I had to get me out of the way. So humor was a way to get me out of the way in their minds, so that they could stop thinking about that. And we could start thinking about the value of some of these processes to create a mission level joy. That's one of the things that I think has great value when we're talking with people, when we're trying to serve and connect with people who are not like us, that we have to get us out of the way. And that's one way. Another way is just focusing on them. Maybe, we don't really have to address it, but let's get beyond the differences to the things that are about, how can I serve this person? And that's the only way I'm going to do that, is to understand more about this person. Now, if you want to understand more about somebody, Brian, if you really are truly trying to understand and you're curious, honestly curious, you're not trying to get to in sales to get to the close and get to a yes. Right. You're really trying to create understanding. So what do?
Well, ask them questions.
That's a great start, right? Yeah. And those questions are, when they are open-ended and they genuinely are sincerely interested in another person, then you begin to have, some connection. As long as I'm thinking, hey, what do they think of me? Hey, what do they, how can I identify with them? And I am trying to speak the language of somebody who's not like me, or I'm trying to act like I understand what I don't understand. What will separate me from them is my presumption that I get it, man. I get who you are.
I know what you're thinking. I know how it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we were talking about the one thing I've always heard people say in defense of themselves is, there's any kind of question about bias, right? Any kind of question of prejudice, what is the best indicator that you're probably dealing with somebody who really has got a significant level of some prejudice and bias? And that is, they say, hey, I am the least prejudiced person you will ever meet. I don't care if you're black or white or male or female or gay or straight. I don't care.
Red flag, red flag.
That's a red flag, man. It's like, uh-oh, ruh-roh.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is they're really saying, I got everything I need to understand. Well, I'm good, right? I'm perfect. But that's you in the way of really creating real understanding. That only happens from genuine curiosity and compassionate inquiry about, tell me so I can understand about you. And then, removing my judgment and my presumptions, but to really be open in how we listen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you define listening, Brian?
Well, that's not what I'm doing right now. Because what I'm doing right now is I'm writing as you're talking. So
so we need a quart of milk and we need to get some eggs.
No, I wasn't doing the grocery list, not yet. But you caught me. Active listening means listening to what you're saying and then not thinking of the next thing you want to say or the next thing you want to ask, but understanding what they're saying.
Yeah, I think that's a very good insight, that listening is not about waiting your turn, right?
Right.
It requires you to do so. But you're right. If I'm thinking about, what I'm going to say, I'm not really listening. I'm at the center again, right? I'm in the way. I'm my own obstacle to creating understanding. And I would add one more thing to that. So listening is, by your definition, to be actively listening is to be actually focused on what they're saying instead of what I'm going to say or what I think or what the next thing is. I got to be really present and mindful in that situation. The other thing is, you got to be willing to be changed by what you hear.
So how do you do that? That's a good one.
Well, I think some things are just simply practice, are really learning what I think is one of the most overlooked virtues of, you could say it's a leadership virtue, but I think it's anybody who wants to be influential. It's not about how much you know and can impart, but how much you're willing to be changed by what you learn. And I think that is just simply humility. Humility is the virtue that I think is so overlooked. We talk about passion and we talk about clarity and communication and, all these buzzwords of leadership. But I think humility is probably the one that's going to get us really make connections with other people, to learn and be changed by them, and to be able to evolve as a leader, to create solutions to problems, to innovate, to compound our own influence by being able to be genuinely listening and changed by what we learn from others, so that we multiply our own ability to think and solve problems by the number of people and their diversity of what they bring to create change that we never would have thought of on our own, right?
Right. So that's a great point. Humility, being able to be changed. How do you acquire humility? I mean, it's not something you just come by. Because there are people that say they're humble.
I always love the people who receive some enormous award, right? And they're like, this is so humbling. I'm like, actually, it's just the opposite. This is
Right.
really affirming and celebrating you.
Yes.
And so it's the
Me.
farthest thing from humbling. you know, having your calendar wiped out in a nanosecond, that was humbling.
That was humbling. We all been there.
You think you're so valuable, and you realize, oh, everybody can do without me.
Huh.
For a really long time. That's humbling.
It's like when I used to go on vacation from work, and nobody would know I was gone.
I'm back. Where were you? And by the way, who are you? Answer the second question first. No, it's funny because I do think, humility, we don't think of it as a skill. You think of it as something that's kind of a genetic trait or something.
Yeah.
Oh, they have such humility about it. It's like, no, that's something you can learn. How do you learn confidence? How do you learn anything else that's a part of your influence and effectiveness? Bit by bit, by little steps that you say, okay, confidence is great, but it has to be leavened with humility. Yeah. Certainty is one of the most destructive forces in the world.
Yeah.
If you think about any disaster that was man-made, hubris is always the root cause. I mean, name one, right? It's just the Titanic. Okay, what did they say about the Titanic?
It'll never sink.
It's unsinkable. And as soon as I can't imagine failure, that is such a loss of humility that absolutely, I'm sure the icebergs got together and went, we got to take them down a notch, right?
We got a doozy here.
Yeah. There was a book by, I think it was Eric Larson, Isaac Storm. It was about the horrible hurricane that created the loss of, I think 6,000 people lost their lives in Galveston, Texas. And when I read about it, he always thought it was a terrible natural disaster. They didn't have the technology then to understand what was happening. Well, when all the water went out of Galveston Bay, and suddenly it was dry land for as far as they could see, and they went, wow, that's weird, What they didn't realize was because the barometric pressure had dropped to levels they'd never seen before. They were getting all kinds of warnings from Havana. Havana said, this is going to be really destructive. These barometric readings are so low. We've never seen low pressure like this. This is going to be the most monstrous storm, and it's going to have consequences. And there will be this tidal wave, the tsunami that's going to happen as a result. Well, the weather people in the Galveston Weather Service, they were so sure that they knew their technology, and they didn't have any regard for the Cuban officers of that. And they went, they don't know how to read instruments, right? They minimized their input because they were sure that, these people compared to me, they're backward and they're not as savvy. And so they ignored every warning that would have saved lives until it was too late. Hubris kills people. Literally, it kills. So, where you start is entertaining the possibility, I probably don't see everything I need to see. I've got blind spots, right? Yeah. Right back to what there's a real value in acknowledging I've got blind spots. Mm-hmm. And I will try to address those blind spots one by one. But I also have the humility, and I need to practice reminding myself, you cannot know what you can't imagine. And so that's always going to be a blind spot. So better questions, always listening, minimizing yourself in the importance of you and getting yourself out of the way. And it's, and then the openness to hear and listen to the input of others. And what we find is the more diverse the input from others, the better the solution. The more valuable and more creative we have. When we have a diversity of experiences, of people, of identities, of all these different experience and viewpoints and worldviews coming together to have input to solve a problem, that's probably going to be a much better way to approach solving complex problems than it is having, a group of, old white guys get together and say, we think we understand everything, right? Mm-hmm. You can see the success level we've had.
Yeah. So
ask any woman. I mean, just, I think it is time. We had a good run. Let's just step aside, right? We had a good run, right? Yeah. Enjoy that. It's like, we had the positions of just kind of privilege and power for way longer than any of the outcomes we created would warrant. And I think women are finally figuring it out. It's like, do we really need them? I can't make an argument. It's like, no, you don't. We were hoping you didn't figure that out, but no.
Yeah, there's that. So tell me, this is not a big word, but it can be a big word. This word you use called hubris. So hubris, is it arrogance?
It's just it's a certainty, right? It's an inability to imagine that I don't have all of the information I need, right? It's the lack of humility. And when there's a lack of humility, I can't imagine failures, even though there are plenty of forces that can create those failures, right? So hubris is it's a closed. I mean, if you think about it for a moment, if you fill a glass with water and you get it topped up to the brim, right? And then somebody says, would you like a little more water? They're like, no, nothing else will fit in there. It's all the way to the brim. That's the way we can be. We feel like if my vessel, I believe, is full, I'm not accepting anybody else's input. It's like, no, I'm fine, right? But we're not full, right? We need the input of lots of different voices, thoughts, and experiences. Mm-hmm. And as long as I believe that I've got everything I need, it's the reason why, people who know scriptures, they were like, pride comes in Proverbs, pride comes before a fall, right? And yeah, hubris is basically a pridefulness that says, I'm good. I got everything. I got this, right? And I don't think that the answer is to be no confidence or to really believe that you can't be decisive, but just to really say, have I consulted all the possibility of viewpoints in order to be fully informed by what's the best path forward for what comes next? I mean, I don't know if were you a Star Trek geek ever?
I used to watch Star Trek when I was a kid. I watched it on TV, but
yeah, when I was a kid, it was the original one with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, right? Mm-hmm. And Captain Kirk was actually it was locked into still kind of this, white male mid-century power structure. But take that part out for just a moment and look at what he did. He didn't run the whole ship, did he? If he had a question about how much power they had, he went to Scotty, right? If it was a question about the logic, he went to Spock, right? If it was a question about something technical. He went to maybe Lieutenant Uhura or Sulu or someone. And so he consulted these and he was decisive once he had the input, but he was not somebody who said, I don't need any of you people. I can fly this thing myself. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that was actually especially 1960s America, that was fairly forward thinking for that time, even if it wasn't, as much of a model as we would, it wouldn't be looked as we would now. But at the time, it was more diverse.
Right.
It was pretty amazing when you look at his leadership and you go like, that's not a bad model, really, for anybody who wants to lead.
Yeah. Good. This is great information. I love talking with you, Dave. You always have so many good, fun stories to come up with. I mean, it's amazing.
I'm all over the place.
Unfortunately, we're at our end of our time already for the day.
Yeah, we're always out of time.
I know. Will you come back?
Yeah, always coming. I'm a friend of the show.
You're a friend of the show.
I'm a friend of the show.
That's how I'll introduce you in the future. Friend of the show.
Friend of the show, Dave.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dave. Again, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, and hopefully we'll get you back on the show soon.
All right.
All right. And hang out in the green room. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Thanks. See you. Oh, my gosh. What a great guy. So much good and so much value that he brings every time. So I'm looking forward to having further conversations with Dave, and I'm sure you are as well. Wow. So that's Thursday. And Friday will be another great day. Friday we are going to have, let's see. Oh, Andrew Davis. Wow. This guy is connected with the Heroic Public Speaking, which is Michael and Amy Port. If you don't mind Michael and Amy Port, look them up online. They are phenomenal. So really looking forward to having Andrew Davis on because he is great as well. So listen for that at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And then at 11:30, we have Greg C. coming back on, talking more about the memory care that is provided at the Worthington, what's it called? Worthington Manor. So more great information from Greg. And he has actually been nice enough to drop off his book to me. And his book is this one right here. It's Things to Remember About Memory Care. So looking forward to having a conversation with Greg. More good stuff coming next week. Wow. We've got a great week lined up for you. So look forward to hearing more about that. But thank you very much for being on today. And thank you very much for everything you've done. If there's ever anything that I can do for you, by all means, let me know. And as always, keep one eye on the road.